Hello, welcome to the channel. Today's video, I'm going to talk about making the perfect segment. Now, this is the method that I use, but it's not one that I invented. And it was actually, the first person I saw do it was Jerry Bennett. And he has segeasy.com, I believe is his website, but I'll leave a link down below. He shows how to make the segments so that they line up perfect and match perfectly. So the first thing you want to do when you start making your segments is cut all your pieces. Now, it's important to get the pieces to the width the correct size. If they're a little bit thicker, if each one is just a tiny bit thicker or something, that's not going to make much difference because once you put them together, they'll have to be sanded down anyway, flat. So, but the main thing is to make sure that you have two clean sides and that they're all the same width. So that's the first important thing. And you can see it cutting there on the saw. Now, one of the first things you're going to want to make for your table saw is a simple little insert. And all this is a piece of wood beveled at a 45, glued onto here so that when this goes on next to the saw, and this is made for my thin bladed saw, this gives a little shelf here for the pieces to fall down, which you'll see later on how that happens. Now, once you have that, you bring out the sled, and the sled that I made was following Jerry's plans. Now, I'm going to make a new one pretty soon, so I'll do a video on that and update a little bit to allow me to use a little wider pieces, but this one works perfect as is. The next piece of equipment I have here is a segment sled, and I made this one according to online directions. Relatively simple to make, but you see these two arms separate here and they can tighten down. Now, the way that you get your segmented piece is you figure out how many pieces you want the segment to be, and then you're going to use, now in my case, I purchased these Segway or Segeasy spacers, and I'll leave a link down below as to where you can find them. But you push them into the front there, and you sort of line this up. Now, what you can do is on the next time I make this, now that I have a laser printer, is I will go ahead and put a laser line across there so I can always line this up. But you just want to get it as close as possible to the center line as you can. Won't make that much difference except for the way that the spacers lay out. So I'll tighten this up, make sure these are together well. Yeah. And here we have it. And this is our 16 segmented setup. Now, the other last thing you're going to need is this particular stop block here. Now, you set the stop block down here so that it doesn't interfere with the stuff that falls off up by the blade. But this slides back and forth. Let me just see some extra dust in there. So I've made this one so it has a locking piece on the bottom here so that as I tighten this down, it's going to lock it in place. Now, I have two spacers here, and the nice thing about this is that these match. When this is completely closed, this is right up against my blade, and it's up against the thin blade. So when I open it up now, this is going to be whatever space I put here is going to be the same as here. So these two spaces will equal out. So in my case, I want to duplicate this particular piece right here. So all I have to do is put it in here and space it out, tighten this down, tighten it real tight so it doesn't move, and then pull this out. And now every cut that I make is going to be exactly the same size as this one. We'll set it aside just to make sure that I'm telling you the truth. Now, if you didn't have this piece, all you have to do is just use any type of measurement here to make the piece the size that you want. So once you have your measurement as to the width of your segments, you just put that width right here, and it's going to give you the exact cut right over here. So what we do on this is that the piece of wood that you have, you're going to make two lines. You're going to make one line, and I'm making it in red here so you can see it, along the top, and one line here, and this could be along the back. Now, I generally put the back against the fence, so I put it against the top fence and then the bottom fence. So this line here will always be against the fence. This line here will always be above. Okay, so with that, we're set to cut some segments. Now, what I'm going to do is I have these grease markers here. I have different color ones, depending on whether it's light or dark wood. And you can see I already have a mark on this one, so I'm going to continue that mark. So I'm going to put one mark along the short edge and one mark along the width, the top edge. Now, what this means that I'm going to do is that I'm going to make sure that my mark is always against this fence, whether it's this fence here or this fence here, it's always going to be against this fence. And I make sure that this mark is always facing up. Now, the reason for that is as we get the different cuts here, these will equal out. This cut will cancel out any negative effect here so that when these two pieces go together, they will give you the exact angle that you need. So that's the idea here between marking your piece of wood. And this is really important, not to flip the wood. I see a lot of people do this and then flip the wood over and then flip the wood over. And you're inducing any error that you may have made on this. Now, if you have this precise, doesn't matter. I'm just not that good. So we are ready to start cutting some segments. And you see that I did a trim piece. When I cut this, I trimmed it off first just to make sure all these pieces are the same. And now we're just going to compare these. Now, this particular piece here that I'm using is a little bit longer than this one, which is not going to make that much difference. The main thing is to make sure that these line up. And you see that those line up almost perfectly. I mean, not exactly 100%. Well, yeah, I can't feel a difference really. So these line up, make your cut. Now they're all exactly the same. This has two marks on it, just like this one. So I can continue cutting now and just make a whole lot of segmented pieces. And what's going to happen is that you're going to end up with pieces, and we'll bring out some of these cut pieces already, that are going to have lines in the back and no lines in the back, but all of them will have a line on top, like this. So what happens is that when you cut it, you're making cuts like this, that they crisscross back and forth. And you can see a little bit of a line right there. But again, we'll put another one here, and this one has a line on the back there. And we'll see if we have a clear one here. We do. And that one goes like this. So these are the cuts that you're making. You're crossing them and then you're flipping around. So what happens is that if there are any errors in the cuts, if it's not the perfect angle that you need, which it is probably going to be very, very close, when you flip this around and you put them together like this, you're going to have one mark on the back, one blank, and then you're going to rotate them just like this. So all your lines will be on the top like this here, and on the back you'll have no line, line, no line, line, and you would do that all the way around. So this makes sure that you flip them around and you have them. So these two are going to be the perfect angle on both sides, because if there's any error here, it's going to be taken out right there. And any error between these two are going to be taken out. So by alternating them, you guarantee that you have the correct angle all the way around. Now that they're all cut, it comes to gluing up and laying them out. Let me just move these out of the way. So, relatively simple. I have a whole bunch here in this bucket that you can see, and this is an extra piece. So I go line, no line, Got a lot of with lines there. No line, no line, line. And we got line and no line. Now that's the way that you lay all these out, just like this. Now, before you want to glue them together, you have little fuzz on the ends there, and maple almost always has fuzz. So I just take just a sanding block and just sand each one down. Now, you can get a sanding block that attaches to the table, and I do have one of those, but I can't reach it right now because my shop is filled with cabinets. And generally it's at these two ends right here, sometimes across the top. You can see there's a lot of cutout there. Now, one of the ways that you can eliminate some of that cutout is by going a little bit slower on your cuts. Now on maple, I've not found, no matter how slow I go, I still get those. But on walnut, when I do my walnut pieces, I can eliminate some of those. And it just takes just a quick little brush against the sanding block. Okay, so once you're done sanding, you can test fit them. And generally I will put together all the rings that I need to use. And best way I found is your hand over here. Now these are going to be for some salt and pepper shakers, or salt and pepper grinders, I should call them, because that's what they are. And I like to use rubber bands to glue them up. In most cases, I do use clamps, the hose clamps also. But as you can see, once I get these, a couple more rubber bands on here, make sure it stays together. So some of them are a little bit higher, see how they stick up, but that doesn't matter. The important thing is when you flip it on over to the flat side, is that all of these fit together perfectly. And using the segment sled, using the sled and making these segments the way that I just outlined here, always makes this just about perfect every time. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get it exactly right. Sometimes wood shrinks, and depending on how long I leave it out here. But I found that the majority of them, I can just glue them right up. And so all I got to do is just remove a little bit of the edge. Once I get rid of those little fibers that are sticking out, nothing's in the way. I get nice, solid, segmented pieces out of it. So if you're trying to get segments that work for you, rather than doing half and then having to sand each side and put them together, this comes out perfect because all of these are the exact same size. Now, when you do half a segment, like you've seen some people, maybe you've seen some people, they'll do half. So they'll glue up half, they'll put a little spacer between here. And then they will take it over to the disc sander and sand it smooth so they get a perfect fit. Well, when you do that, you've made these two pieces and these two pieces a little bit shorter. So they're not quite the same width. Now, is that noticeable? Probably not, depending on how many segments you have there. But this method, and again, Jerry Bennett is the first one that I've seen do it. This really works well. This is the one that I use all the time, and it just makes life so much easier when you do segments. So next time you want to try segments, or if you haven't tried segments or want to get into segments, I'd recommend making a sled. And I will have a video soon about a new sled that I will be making. But I do have a video, if you click right up here, on the stop, and the stop works perfect because it gives you the same size cuts, and you can duplicate the cuts. I had some of these left over, and I needed to make more for these new salt and pepper grinders that I'm making. And they match exactly on the size just by using that sled. Now here's one that I have glued up that's ready. These two, this one's not sanded, but this one's glued up, and this one is glued up and sanded on both sides, so it's ready to be assembled. But these were extra from the ones that I made before, but I will probably incorporate them, if I can, into the design of this new salt and pepper grinders that I'm making. So hopefully that helps you out. If you do like what I'm doing here, please do like and subscribe. That helps out the channel a lot. And hopefully we've showed you a good way to make some segments and really start having some fun turning segmented bowls and vessels and all kinds of things. Thanks for watching. Take care.